Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the College Common Ground podcast. I'm so excited that you're here for another episode. I am joined with two incredible guests today, Sammy and Stephanie, and I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Sammy. I am a sociology major, and politically, I identify as a Marxist feminist. I am into communism. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, hi guys. My name is Stephanie. I'm a communications major. I would say that I typically vote Republican, and on this topic, I feel the same way.
Today, we're going to be talking about abortion and reproductive rights as our topic, so we're going to get right into the first question. I think that this topic, it becomes an argument over even like the definition of abortion. So we're just going to start with each of you will have as long as you want to say what do you define abortion as, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, so just right off the bat, abortion is a healthcare right. And so I think that, to me, abortion is, a medical procedure that people with uteruses, women and birthing people, can take for a variety of different reasons. And I would say that an abortion counts as an abortion throughout the pregnancy, throughout all the trimesters, from fertilization to the 9-month period. I would say that that's an abortion.
Yeah, I agree with that part. I would say that abortion is killing or getting rid of the baby once you realize at any moment in the pregnancy that you are pregnant, whether it's been a week or however long it's been.
Okay, yeah.
Do we have any? We can go back and forth again if you'd like, or we can go to the next question.
Okay, I think another, I appreciate your laying out on the table that common definitions are so important.
Yes.
Because I was just thinking the word baby, I think that that's going to be a huge difference between our frameworks because to me, it's not a baby yet. It's a fetus, and it's not sentient. So doesn't have the capacity for emotional intelligence and awareness of what's going on in the same way that we do as humans that are out of the fetus or out of the womb. So yeah, I think before the birth, in my mind, that's a fetus. But I understand that for you, it's probably very different.
Yeah, no, I see where you're coming from. I would agree, while it's in the womb, it is a fetus, but I kind of relate the term fetus and baby to be the same thing.
Okay, got it.
Follow-up question, as we're on this topic. What do you guys think the word fetus, baby, human, when does a fetus become a human in your eyes or become a baby if you think it's not the whole time? And then for you, the opposite of that question, I guess, is do you think it's a baby the whole time? But just to clarify.
Yeah, so I'm aware that I don't know exactly when the marker is, but at some point, the fetus can start to hear things and it starts to form a bond with the person who's carrying it. And I'm not denying that, but I'm so far in favor of abortion and of abortion as a healthcare right that in my mind that is less important than the person with the uterus, their ability to determine what is going to happen to their body and to their life. So to go back to your question, I think that it's a baby when it is born. And prior to that time, it's a fetus in my mind. And I understand that there's probably some medical terminology that would disagree with that, but just in the way that I think about it as a framework.
I would say for me, as soon as that egg has been fertilized and you realize, or whoever realizes that they are pregnant, then you have a baby, you have a fetus inside of you, and therefore that is a human.
Okay, what does reproductive rights mean to you personally?
I think that reproductive rights are inseparable from human rights. Reproductive rights are women's rights. Reproductive rights are trans people's rights. Reproductive rights are gender expansive people's rights. And reproductive rights are inseparable from the right to determine for yourself, the right to choose personally what happens to your own body. Our history, and specifically like our history as it deals with enslavement and the robbing of, people's autonomy, Black people's autonomy, women's autonomy, LGBTQ plus people's autonomy to decide what happens to them. And so, yeah, I think that the idea of reproductive rights for me is inseparable from human rights and intersectional theory.
I would say, like, reproductive rights are important. The problem is, I would say, is like once it's a fetus, once the egg's been fertilized, then it's a human, and then therefore you're killing the human, you're killing the baby, the fetus, whatever it may be. So that's where I kind of draw the line, but I do understand like reproductive rights and like the reasoning for having them and like how important that they are for anyone who can reproduce.
Yeah.
What is your opinion? Should abortion be a state or a federal issue?
Okay. I guess I feel like if we're talking about like the United States as a whole, if we're gonna have a ban on this, then I feel like personally it would need to be federally, just because I feel like when states are kind of like doing their own thing, that kind of creates not only tension between the states, but depending on like where you live and everything. So I feel like if we're just gonna have a ban, make it universal, make it federally.
Yeah. It's so funny because I completely agree, but from the exact opposite end of the spectrum. Like, abortion needs to be legal federally in my mind for the same reasons. I think that when we leave things up to states that are involved in human rights and the protection of human rights, which is how I see abortion and reproductive justice, it leaves room for the violation of those rights to exist in states. And also I think it's really important to notice and recognize that a majority of Black birthing people and birthing people of color and gender expansive people live in states currently with abortion bans. So abortion bans are also like, they're targeted towards low-income people and people of color, and they are disproportionately felt by those populations of people too, because of those inequalities that exist in our healthcare system and in our access to information and all that kind of stuff. So,
Reproductive rights, do you think that includes contraceptions, maternal health care, and sex education alongside abortion?
everything.
All of that?
I think it includes everything because all of that is related to that framework of the right to have a child, the right not to have a child, the right to raise your child as you wish in a dignified manner, the right to sexual expression and pleasure. All of that is intertwined and so important for health.
I kind of agree with you there. I would say I think of the same thing when I think of reproductive rights. I think of everything that kind of, like you said, like condoms, contraception, Plan B, abortions. I kind of think of it all that way, but I think of them differently, if that makes sense. I think of like, condoms, contraception, everything like that, birth control, as being like that safe sex aspect of it. And then there's kind of like a line with abortion. But I do kind of group them together and think of them all as reproductive rights.
Do you think abortion is primarily a moral issue or a healthcare issue?
Y'all know how I feel.
Yeah, I think you already answered this question.
I mean, I feel like it's more morally a problem, I guess I would say. Kind of going back to how I said, if you're going to have sex, then you need to be willing to withstand the consequences of that if you are to get pregnant and have a child. But I kind of see like the healthcare aspect of it too, where if, you know, the mom cannot live because she's having this baby, where the abortion would have to happen, or in a case like that, just using that as an example, I kind of see that side as well.
So I think that I hear what you're saying. I think your response like neglects cases of rape and incest, because that's not a choice to have sex. It's not sex, it's abuse. And so like, I think that that's where I have another huge problem with this as a moral issue. And then also like, I think that people who are pro-life tend to assume that the choice to have an abortion is taken very lightly. And if it's legal, then it's just something that people will be like, oh, it's a Tuesday. Oops, I'm pregnant. I'm gonna go get an abortion. Like that, I don't think the choice to have an abortion is ever made like that. You know, it's a healthcare choice, but also it has devastating emotional impacts on the person who's carrying the fetus. And those are impacts that the person who's receiving the procedure is going to consider and has to live with for the rest of their lives, on top of the situation in which they got pregnant in the first place, which may or may not have been traumatizing. So I think that like it's really important to remember that it's not like getting your blood drawn. You know, it's not something that people really ever like are like, yes, you know.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think that like people that go and get abortions are just like, oh no, I'm pregnant, like let me just go get an abortion. I obviously think that that's something that they think about and they have like a hard time with, because once again, that's another big decision you're making. Do you keep the baby? Do you not? So I understand that. I don't think that it's just like a whim decision, like,
Right, okay.
you know, I'm gonna go get dinner. It's not like a decision like that.
Is there ever a situation where abortion should or should not be allowed, and why or why not?
I feel like morally, in my mind, like the case that I could understand having an abortion would be rape and incest, because once again, that's an awful situation. You did not choose that. You didn't go out and have sex. That happened to you. That's not something that you consented to. That's not something that you agreed with. So, I mean, like based on the situation and given like those circumstances, that is like a case where I could see, you know, this awful thing happen to you. But one thing I will bring up is that like if you were raped and you did have that child, no one can tell the difference between the child that you had because you went and had sex and that's your own child, or the child that you were raped and you had that child. No one's going to be able to tell that difference between that human life, that person, after they are born.
Except for the child, when they grow up in an environment and in an emotional context in which their parent is traumatized and has to be reminded of this traumatic event that happened to them every time they see their kid. Like, I disagree there.
If you were to like walk up and I have two different children, conceived, one consensual, one by rape, you would never know the difference of which was which.
Right, but I think that too takes a toll on the parent and the child, because knowing that you were unwanted or that you weren't planned, I think that takes a toll on people. Like even when their parents are like, yeah, you were a surprise, like that you feel something. And so I think that like, you know, for a parent to be out in public and to receive a compliment on their kids, like every interaction is going to have some reminder of the fact that they were exploited in the conception of that child. And I think that that's not something that you ever forget or get over. And I think that in every interaction it would come up.
How do personal beliefs influence public policy when we talk about the moral argument for abortion, or any political issue for that matter? What is your belief on personal belief or morality coming into the play of public policy, whether that's religion or any kind of morals that people follow, or even a framework that a certain group of people that follow? What's your opinion on that influencing public policy?
I think it's more of like the way that I was raised and where I come from. I was kind of always taught that if you are going to have sex, if you're going to practice the acts of sex, if you're going to do sexual things, you have to be willing to withhold those consequences that could happen. And that obviously, if you don't want that to happen, you need to take the precautionary measures, birth control, contraception, use condoms, everything like that. And so for me, I think it's just kind of the way that I was raised and how I grew up, and knowing that if I was to ever get pregnant, I would have that child.
I think it's also the resources you had access to as well.
Yes.
And that's not to fault you, because I had access to those resources too. But that's a key piece of that. You know, the economic resources, the ideological resources, the support system that we have, all of that influences the choices that we make.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm definitely very thankful for everything that I had access to. Growing up, learning about the connection that I had with my mom, talking about this stuff like that.
Right.
That I know other people may not have that strong of a connection or access to birth control, condoms, contraception, anything like that. So I do understand like how that plays a part.
This like gets really intense because my belief in human rights is so strong. And my knowledge, and I think the knowledge that is available to the public is not perfect, but there's a plethora of data to back up the fact that like human rights being protected is beneficial to every single human on the planet. Like it is beneficial to our mutual relationships to each other. It's beneficial for our relationships with ourselves. And I think that like to bring abortion into that, we know that statistics show, data shows that when abortion is illegal, the abortion rates do not go down.
I would say to add to that as well is like obviously like any policy that's ever passed, nothing's never going to be unbiased. There's always background coming into it, kind of like no matter what it really is. So that's kind of something that, you know, I understand. I agree with you there.
So I think the conversation is all the time about men being included in conversations about reproductive rights if it comes to that being their DNA, whether it's fetus, baby, whatever our personal opinions are. What is your opinion on men being included in the conversation or the choice or the decision or the conversation at all with abortions and reproductive rights? And specifically, if not just a random man on the street, if this man is the one who has the sperm to the egg in a person giving birth, what is our opinion on that?
Unless you have a uterus, get the hell out of here. Get the hell out. That's how I feel.
I think that if this is your boyfriend, fiance, husband, whoever it is, I do think that there should be a conversation that should be had. I think obviously if it's like a different situation, rape, incest, whatever, that's like a whole different situation. But I think that if you and whoever made the choice to go and have sex, that there should be a conversation had if you do end up getting pregnant.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Not having that conversation would be super problematic.
We were talking earlier about how it's not a willy-nilly decision. Most people would take the time to decide, you know, pros and cons and what they need to do for their personal life. Do you think there should be a law or a system in place where there's like a limit of how many abortions? I know there's been cases where a woman can have up to 10 abortions versus someone might have one in their lifetime or none. So do you think that there should be like a flagging ever of how many, or do you think that there's an unlimited amount of abortions that you can have and there should be no like consequence for that? And do you think also, side part of that, I guess just do you think that there's a difference, I guess, in that moral obligation if like the numeracy amount of it changes it and what you believe in?
As we know, I don't agree with abortion, but I think that, like, let's say I never have an abortion in my life, but let's say, like, someone I know has, like, one, but it was, like, medically. Like, it had to happen. I feel like there's, like, differences between that than someone who just consistently gets pregnant and then has 10 abortions. I feel like there's a big difference there. So I think numbers do matter in this situation because I feel like why would you want to continue having abortion knowing how big of a decision that was for you to make the first time. So it almost feels like once you get to the 10th one, if you're going to decide to have an abortion again, at that point, it's kind of like, yeah, I already know that I'm going to have an abortion because I've had 9 other ones compared. So I feel like the more that you have, I don't want to say like the less it means, but like you've thought through this multiple times already, that you have an understanding of how you feel and why you would want to do this. So I feel like it is like, I guess, not less meaningful, but it's like a harder decision when it's like those lower numbers compared to if you're going to go out and have 10 abortions, whatever it may be.
And then is that not, that's not including like 10, I wanted to clarify. I don't mean like someone got raped 10 times. Like,
No. But I'm saying like
my question asking, I'm not including like, I'm talking about genuinely like
yes.
consensual sex, 1 time, 0 time, 10 times.
No, I agree. It's those numbers matter when it's you have had sex, you realize you're pregnant now. Are you deciding that you want to keep the baby or get an abortion? That is what I'm talking about when I say like the numbers matter. Obviously, I would agree that rape and incest and stuff like that, that's completely different situations.
Understood. So I'm such a broken record. Abortion is a human rights issue. So I think it doesn't matter. I think that the fact that the person carrying the fetus, the person with the uterus, needs to have the right to decide what is going to happen to their body always, every single day, every day of the week. And no matter how many times they make that choice, they should have the right to make that choice. And I would disagree that it doesn't mean, or not that it doesn't mean as much going on, but that, like there's like a fast track to that choice, and that complicates the moral nature of the choice that they're making. I would disagree with that because, if that child, if the fetus is born, is a child, grows up, like you have to consider the reality of what's going to happen, what the life of that child is going to look like when they're brought into the world and in a context in which their parent or parents are not prepared for, or if they're put into the adoption system that's broken and already so overwhelmed, in which children are harmed and have no control over what's happening to them, have no autonomy. And of course there are exceptions and there are really wonderful stories and good outcomes that can happen, but systemically, the system is not good for people, not good for kids. And so I think that the choice to have an abortion, if it's your 10th abortion and you're making that choice because you're not ready to have a kid and you're not financially prepared, or your partner is an idiot, or whatever the case may be, you're saving that child from having to endure a life of extreme struggle when there's already so many children who are in that position and had no choice as to whether or not that was going to become their outcome. So also, one last thing, I'm super curious. Do you support the death penalty?
I think it really just depends on the situation.
Okay.
Like if you're just going to ask me if I support it, no.
Okay.
Like straight up, like no. But I think that there are certain situations where if we have a serial killer
Right.
going out, killed, 50 people in his life, like I just think that there's given situations where it is acceptable. But if you're just going to ask me if, like one bad thing happened, should they be in jail or should they die? I put them in jail, federal prison, whatever it may be. But yeah.
Okay. The reason I bring that up is because I think that has a lot to do with this conversation and this whole idea of life as sacred and of human rights. And I think that like it's really important to consider when a life, if you believe that all life is sacred from inception, from fertilization, when does a life become unsacred? And how likely is it for someone to experience hardships that cause them to become incarcerated and that kind of thing later on in life if their parents aren't prepared to support them and stuff. So I don't know. I just think that's an interesting dimension to
Yeah, I
consider.
guess one thing that I would add, like speaking on the death penalty, I feel like the cases that I see most is it's like if you are willing to go out and kill someone else and take someone else's life, then you also have to be willing to lose your own, if that makes sense.
Do you support the death penalty, or what is your opinion on that?
No, I don't support it.
No. The quote, abortion is murder or abortion is not murder, do you ever think abortion is murder? And then for you, I guess the opposite of that, like, do you think abortion is always murder? So,
No, I don't think abortion is murder,
ever.
ever.
Okay.
I think that it's a choice that we are all entitled to if we have a uterus. And if we don't have a uterus, then I think we need to stay out of it.
I wouldn't say always, but I feel like most of the time, yes, abortion is murder. I guess in the cases that it would vary in my mind, my beliefs in that is that if it's medically, like you go in and then something happens, the doctors decide that this is what they have to do in order to save you, whatever that may be. That's where I see the difference, kind of. Not fully, but I would say that majority of the time, I would say that abortion is murder.
So what changes with the fetus that makes it not murder? If the fetus is threatening the life of the mother, what changes? 'Cause
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't always, like, I would say that, yes, it's still murder. Like, yes, I guess I am saying that it's always murder.
Yeah.
But in my, like, when that happens, I feel like there's,
some justification.
yes,
Okay.
if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's interesting.
From each of you, where do you think that you found common ground at all, if you think that you found any at all? In maybe even one sentence.
If you have a response, go ahead. Let me think.
I think it's really interesting because, especially in the last part, when you're like, okay, like abortion is murder all of the time, but sometimes there's a justification for it. Like in that sliver of justification, like that's very pro-choice of you. And so I think that we both have an appreciation for human rights. And I have no doubt that we both care for other people and we want other people to be happy and feel safe. But I think we have very different understandings of how that's possible and the consequences of abortion or not having an abortion and how those consequences relate to people's outcomes.
No, I agree with you. I think something that we do agree on is people's lives and how, I guess, they matter, essentially. Just life as a whole, I think that that's something we agree on. But kind of, yeah, as you said, I think that there's definitely parts of this where like we fully agree, or just even, I think we both had a great understanding of one another the entire time. Even if it was the same but completely flipped, if that makes sense. So I think that that's something that
Is
we kind of,
encouraging.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah,
of
thank
course.
you.
Thank you guys for watching today. We are so happy that you tuned in, and thank you to my guests. So we'll see you next week.